Welcome back to Blueprint for Wealth, and welcome to my guest, Bob Kipps, who is the Managing Director at KippsDeSanto. Welcome, Bob.
Yeah, hi, Wayne.
Welcome, and thanks for being a guest on Blueprint for Wealth. Let me tell you a little bit about Bob. He's a native Washingtonian like me, and he's the son of a government contracts litigation attorney, which we'll forgive him for. But his whole life has revolved around aerospace, defense, and government contracting, negotiation, and strategy. He really is one of the true experts in this area, and his firm, KippsDeSanto, has focused for many, many years really exclusively on that area and all the aspects of GovCon. And as an investment banker and a transaction advisor, he's really got a unique opportunity to help clients like our listeners who may be in that space understand what strategic transaction really best fits their specific ownership and their operating needs and their transaction goals and objectives. So this is an exciting opportunity for me. I've known Bob for many years, but it's great for me to include you in our parade of special guests. And first, how did you start KippsDeSanto? I know you came out of another big investment bank. How did it start? What inspired you to start it?
We started KippsDeSanto with a couple colleagues, Mark Marlin and Kevin Santo, who I was working with at our predecessor firm, Houlihan Lokey, which I had actually been with for 11 years and had a great experience there as that firm grew, and it ultimately ended up selling a year before we started KippsDeSanto. So I had a great experience because that firm grew from 80 folks to almost 800 by the time I left. And before that, I'd also had the benefit of working with a highly successful sort of consulting organization, which ultimately got splintered, but all gobbled into Navigant, which itself has been acquired. So I'd had the benefit of working with some great entrepreneurs, had some great mentors along the way, and always kind of had the itch in the back of my mind to kind of start my own thing.
Who were some of your key mentors that helped you through your career that you really think about a lot?
Well, I would say from the very beginning, you mentioned my father. He was actually a hardworking sort of government contracts lawyer, and so I did see the benefit of sort of focus and hard work. And he was the lawyer, probably like you. Worked during the day, came home, did more work at night, back in the day when before Zoom and everything else. So that was, from the beginning, kind of saw the benefit of focus and hard work. Then, like I say, at the consulting firm, kind of similarly at a high level, the firm was called Peterson Consulting. Alan Peterson happened to know my father. So I ended up meeting the CEO, and I probably wouldn't have naturally, but he was a great mentor. And then at Houlihan, I had two great mentors, Lou Payon and Jerry Grossman. I think you know Jerry. And so that we're both sort of, very influential in sort of setting the tone and culture that I liked. And ultimately that Kevin, Mark, and I kind of set at KippsDeSanto. So.
Absolutely. Now, last year, you guys probably set a record pace of transactions. Was that your best year in terms of the number of transactions and the dollar value involved?
By far. Yeah, we did 32 transactions last year, up from 20 the year before. So yeah, it was a blockbuster year for the industry, and we were fortunate to benefit from that too.
So if you had to analyze the reasons for the flood of M&A activity, particularly in the GovCon sector last year, what would that be?
Well, I would say it was across other sectors as well. And we've started to grow into technology, non-government oriented technology and managed services and software. But so we have a little bit of a sense as to what's happening in other places. But I'd say that the biggest element, which I know you're familiar with, on the seller side was for government contractors in particular, but all private company owners, was the potential and fear of potential change on the capital gain side. And so that was a catalyst. There was also some residual from people that took off 2020, given the commencement of the pandemic. And then on the buy side, because there's a buyer for every one of those sellers, there's just been this flood into private capital and into alternative investments from institutional investors, from high net worth folks, into private equity and hedge funds. And so you've seen private equity as an aggressive buyer in the middle market. And so it's really was fantastic. And obviously you continue to have low interest rates and a strong credit market. And you put all those things together and you end up with a lot of buyers and a lot of sellers.
It was a perfect storm.
Yeah.
What do you think is going to happen in 2022 now that we know pretty well that at least I believe that there will not be any tax legislation this year. If there is, it's not going to increase the capital gains rate. The worst thing that could happen is they enact the rule that applies the net investment income tax, the 3.8%, to S corp owners, and that just jacks up the cost of their deal. What do you think is going to happen in 2022? What are you seeing so far?
We're very bullish on 2022. I'd say it kind of feels a little bit like, and you probably remember this, we were around 2010. There was a kind of a similar scare that, rates might go up. They didn't. And then they had 2011. And then 2012, they actually did go up at the end of 12. So definitely some deals got pulled forward into a crazy fourth quarter last year. So I wouldn't be surprised to see the first quarter be a little quieter on the announcement front once we get beyond January, where still December deals are being announced. But I'm extremely bullish on this year because the same economic conditions exist. Still relatively low interest rates. While there's been some uptick here in the last few months, it's starting from a very low level.
Do you believe that the interest rate situation is going to remain fairly stable this year, or do you expect, or does Capital One even expect to see increases that might put a chilling effect on M&A?
Well, I can't speak for Capital One, but I would say that I don't view them changing to a degree where they would have a material impact on M&A. I think that naturally, I think you're going to see some rates go up either as they catch up to inflation, or you see the continued Fed activity trying to control inflation and or reduce the size of its balance sheet. So I think it's inevitable because right now interest rates are lower than inflation. That's not a sustainable sort of phenomenon. So something's got to give. Either inflation's got to work its way through the system, or rates are going to drift up a little bit. I don't think it's going to be material enough to impact M&A. And the reason is just there's still that flush of buyer demands. There's so many new private equity platforms in particular last year that were created, and they're all looking to build. They weren't just bought to hold. And so they, on average, at least in the GovCon and aerospace defense, they buy 2 or 3 deals in that lifetime before they sell themselves. So there's an acquisition on the front end, 2 or 3 deals along the way, and 4 or 5 years later, they sell themselves. So it's sort of a self-looking ice cream cone. You'd say once the number of deals was so high last year, it somewhat sets the tone for the next 2 or 3 years where there's going to be tuck-ins along the way. And on the seller side, I thought last year was going to be a buyer's market because of the avalanche of sellers trying to get ahead of taxes. And it ended up being pretty strongly in equilibrium, probably more a seller's market than a buyer's market. I think this year there's more buyer demand than seller supply because of that pull forward. So listen, I think we've got a few more years left. It's just, again, it's not like everyone's out of capital or all the same conditions exist as last year. I think we're just kind of dealing with a little bit of a hangover and pull forward from the year-end deals, which ultimately, as you said, right, we're for naught potentially.
Right. So the trend continues. I mean, I guess my next question was on private equity. What percentage of the deals, the 32 deals that you all did, were private equity or high net worth family offices buying into the GovCon sector, technology sector versus strategic buyers that, the big companies that were doing the purchasing?
Yeah, I don't have the exact breakdown, but I'd say that over the years, and last year was probably similar to that, private equity has bought about half of the clients that we sell. So, but I would say that it's bifurcated, and a little bit on this to get terminology in sync. About half of that half, so about 25%, are new platforms. And the other half of the private equity is add-ons to their platforms. So, and then another quarter of it would be public buyers like Parsons or CACI or Vectrus. We've sold several companies to over the last couple of years. And then private to private, like we sold a company to CVP last year. private entrepreneur-backed business buying Atlas Research. So it's a little, they kind of, year in, year out kind of fall into that, quartile, each quartile, two of which are private equity influenced.
Right. So about 50% private equity,
Right.
but some are add-ons, some are new platforms, and then we've got a lot of other buyers that are out there. There's a lot of cash out there is what we're seeing. I did a deal, it was not a GovCon deal, it was a different industry at the end of the year last year, and we didn't have a letter of intent until December the 8th, and we had to close it by December the 31st. And one of the benefits of being able to close as quickly as we did was the ability to get representations and warranties insurance on that deal. Now, it didn't leave the insurer a lot of time to do their due diligence, but what are your thoughts? Are you seeing a lot of deals that are utilizing reps and warranties insurance?
Definitely. I would say, as you've known and watched, we've seen the same thing over the last 10 years. Rep and warranty insurance has become available for more and more smaller and smaller deals. I'd say 10 years ago, it was really maybe $250 million deals, and it went to 100, then it went to 50. And now most of the deals, our sweet spot is 25 million to $1 billion. So almost every deal we do has rep and warranty insurance. I think there may have been one or two or three out of the 32 that did not have it, where it would have been 10 years ago the other way around. We might have had two or three out of 10 to 20% max. So it's become a great product. I did experience a little bit differently than you did at year end. We actually had a deal slip into this year because the rep and warranty insurance people were so backed up. Same kind of thing, late to the game. The buyer was late. The buyer and seller late to the game. It just was too late to get it done. But it's a great product. It simplifies things. It's it's actually a better it's a smarter recognition of the real risks, especially in government services where there's not a tremendous amount of liability. And said, there's always the fear factor when you're on the hook for something, but the possibilities are so remote, and the pricing of insurance has become so economical, it almost pays for itself just by not having the escrow and money tied up for a while.
Okay. Well, so it's helpful, it's economical, it's not too cost intensive for the seller and the buyer. Do you see that the parties usually split the cost of the reps and warranties insurance, or is it something that the buyer ends up carrying and paying for? Because it's not inexpensive. It's fairly expensive depending on the size of the deal.
Yeah, it varies based on how much negotiation leverage you have. Some buyers will say as part of their offer, like it has to differentiate themselves, they'll pay for the whole thing. I would say most commonly it's probably split. And so if 30 of our 32 deals had it, I'd say 20 of them probably split it, and maybe 10 had the buyer paying for it. It was a pretty good market. So some places sometimes you get the buyer to pay the whole thing, but I'd say more often it's probably split.
So I think I just heard you say 30 out of the 32 deals used reps and warranties.
That's right. That'd be probably my estimate. Yeah.
Well, then that, assuming that the size of the deal justifies it, that's something for prospective buyers and sellers to be looking at very seriously, because it really cuts down on the negotiation between the lawyers and cuts down on the time that it takes to draft the purchase agreement, which is what we found. It made things a lot easier in the long run to negotiate a deal that was fair to both sides.
That's right.
So, you have had KippsDeSanto for a long, long time, and then you sold to Capital One. What was the impetus for the transaction? What caused you to take that giant step as an entrepreneur? You had control over your destiny. You may still have control over your destiny, but Cap One's a big company.
Yeah, it wasn't. It was a little surreal, in a lot of ways, as I'll explain. We had been we'd been through, like I said, been through it, Houlihan, been through the sale of a bank. It was bigger than we were when we sold, it was bigger, much bigger transaction. But I'd been through a few transactions, and then obviously saw firsthand what we do for a living for our clients.
Right.
And it was more a function because, we're a services company, like, you a law firm. And so it was less about exiting. I guess now mid 50s. I'm about to be 55 here in a couple months. So it wasn't about sort of exiting and retiring. It was more about how do we position ourselves to continue on our strategy. And our strategy was, as we've talked a lot about private equity, participating in more private equity deals and having them as clients, not just buyers, and being able to expand. And we'd worked real hard to build our brand in the marketplace, but it was predominantly a aerospace, defense, and government services sort of brand, and a Washington area brand. And it was great. But when we thought about expanding into enterprise technology, which we had and we are, it was, we needed a little bit of a break. And so we also, as we moved up market on larger deals, the boutique status wasn't always advantageous. It was very advantageous in working with entrepreneurs, like, hey, we're one and the same, kindred spirits, same handshake.
Right.
But larger deals, we just said, hey, at some point if we're going to really move up market and conquer the upper side of the middle market, it's probably good to team with somebody. And so we actually interviewed 2 investment banks like ourselves, and hired one of them. And they took us through a very comparable process that we take a lot of our clients through, which is a
Really?
new auction.
So you actually hired an investment banker to represent you as an investment banker.
That's right. I told our partner there, I was like, you picked a hard life. It's like a lawyer working for a lawyer. It's like, geez, talk about someone looking over your shoulder. But it was a great experience. And it was, we tried to be a good client. And it was, but it was, they reached and to get to Capital One, we did not know, this is 2019. So we sold and closed our deal in September of 2019.
Wow.
And we had no idea. We knew a lot of the folks at Capital One, both in their government contracting group and other places, being the presence they have in Northern Virginia, and had no idea they were interested or had just started an M&A product line in New York. And it was they'd hired a generalist person, and the banker that we hired knew that. And so, we joke with people all the time that, because, clients debate whether they want to hire a broker or a banker. I'm like, we as a banker hired another banker to sell us to someone in our office building. And don't regret it. It's like, hey, that was great. They knew Capital One. They knew the corp dev people. They knew their strategy. They had, had 6 or 8 management presentations, got 3 or 4 final LOIs, all this, exactly the same process that you and I take our clients.
Sure.
We went through, and it was maybe, 5 or 6 months, got exclusive, and the deal was announced, and it was a great process, and they've been a great help. Like I say, we are somewhat, we've been a new product line for them, and they've.
So it gives you more resources. It allows you to expand your offerings. It sounds like a win-win for everybody.
They've kept our brand. All of our people have stayed. They're there when we need them. A lot of the same shared values for the community and doing the right thing. And it's really worked out well. So well that they bought another M&A firm in November of last year. So in the healthcare world, which is, they had a big lending business in our footprint, or we're in their lending footprint in government contracting. Sure. Healthcare is another big vertical where they lend into. They bought a healthcare M&A firm in Minneapolis. And so it's, we're on the ground floor of helping kind of build a new product line for a great kind of top 10 bank.
It's a great company. I know it well. Well, congratulations on that, and congratulations on your amazing success, continuing success. But last year, just probably setting track records for doing deals. If people want to get in touch with KippsDeSanto, how do they do that?
Well, I can always, Google, email, phone. We're either there or our phones are forwarded. So it's www.KippsDeSanto.com. Our main line 703-442-1400. They'll find us. We're around our business. I know, it's given the propensity of government contractors in the Washington area, it's probably half in the Washington area, but a lot in Southern California and Pacific Northwest and Huntsville. I mean, it's really around the country, but it's been great. And being on the Capital One platform where they have presence other places is helpful to have that kind of brand in other geographies.
Well, thank you. Thanks for being a special guest on
Yeah, I
Blueprint for
appreciate you
Wealth.
inviting me on. Great to see you too.
Great to see you. And folks, tune in next time for another special guest and educational moment on Blueprint for Wealth. I'm Wayne Zell. Have a great week.